It can sometimes feel like the economy is this giant, super unpredictable machine, right? Well, it turns out the government has this whole toolkit it uses to try and keep everything running smoothly. So today, we're going to pop open that box, take a look inside, and figure out how these tools actually work. All right, let's dive in.
So, we're going to break this all down into four pretty straightforward parts. First up, we'll talk about the main goal. Like, what's the point of all this economic management anyway? Then, we'll get into the two big tools in the kit: fiscal policy and regulation. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at why using these tools is this constant, tricky balancing act.
Okay, so let's start with the most fundamental question of all, right? Why does the government even get involved in the economy in the first place? What are they actually trying to do here?
I mean, you can kind of think of the economy like a car. Sometimes it's going way too fast, other times it's crawling along, and sometimes it feels like it's about to swerve right off the road. The government, in this picture, sees itself as the driver, making all these little adjustments to the wheel to keep the ride smooth. So the big question is, how do they actually steer this thing? When you get right down to it, it all boils down to two main goals. On one side, they want to foster growth. We're talking more jobs, new ideas, a better standard of living for everybody. But on the other side, they also want to maintain stability to prevent those huge, scary crashes or wild swings. These two things, growth and stability, are the why behind basically every tool we're going to talk about. All right, let's grab the first tool out of the kit. This one is all about the money. We're talking about how the government collects cash through taxes and how it pumps it back into the economy through spending. These are basically the biggest financial levers they've got to pull. So here's the official definition for you. Fiscal policy, it's really just all the government's decisions about taxing and spending. That's it. But the key word there is regulate. This isn't accidental. It's a very deliberate attempt to shape what happens in the economy. And what's super interesting here is that fiscal policy is kind of like a two-in-one tool. It can be the gas pedal, to speed the economy up, but it can also be the brake to slow things down if they start getting a little too hot. So let's take a look at how both of those work. So if you want to hit the gas, the government basically has two moves. First, it can cut taxes. That leaves more money in your pocket and in the pockets of businesses to go out and spend or invest. Or second, it can just ramp up its own spending. Think about those stimulus checks a while back. That's a perfect example. That was the government directly injecting money into the system to get things moving. And what about hitting the brakes? Well, it's pretty much the exact opposite. They can raise taxes, which pulls money out of the economy, or they can cut back on their own spending. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would you ever want to slow down growth? Well, believe it or not, sometimes an economy can grow too fast, and that can lead to some major problems, like runaway inflation. When the prices of everything start rising way faster than your paycheck does. Okay, on to tool number 2, and this one's a little different. So if fiscal policy is the gas and the brake pedal, then you can think of regulation as, well, all the rules of the road. It's about painting the lines, putting up the stop signs, setting the speed limits. It's basically the government setting the rules of the game that everyone, businesses and consumers, has to play by. And this gets right to the heart of the central challenge with regulation. See, every single rule comes with a trade-off. It's always designed to create some kind of benefit, for sure, but it almost always has a cost attached. And that tension, that push and pull, is at the center of pretty much every single debate we have about government regulations. Let's talk about the good stuff first, the benefits. Regulations can do some really, really important things. I mean, they can stop companies from doing shady, unfair stuff, which helps make sure it's a level playing field for everyone. And, of course, they give us crucial protections as consumers, making sure the stuff we buy is safe and that we're not getting ripped off. But there's always the other side of that coin. Let's take a real-world example, like the Clean Air Act. The benefit is obviously massive, right? We get way less pollution and better public health. Huge win. But what's the cost? Well, businesses had to spend billions of dollars to comply with those new rules, and that can mean lower profits, or if you add it all up, it can even contribute to the whole economy growing a bit more slowly. And this really brings us to the big picture. So next time you see politicians on the news arguing about tax cuts or some new environmental rule, what they're really debating is how to use these tools. It's this constant, super difficult balancing act, and there are just no easy answers. This quote right here just sums it up perfectly. It's a simple sentence, but man, does it capture the reality that policymakers are always up against.
There's just no free lunch when it comes to economic policy. Every single action has a consequence, and there's always something on both sides of the ledger.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Using that government toolkit is never about just one thing. It is always a choice between competing goals. We all want strong growth, but we also want stability, we want fairness, we want protection. And those things are often in conflict.
And that really leaves us with the huge question that every society has to wrestle with. When you're steering this big economic car, where do you draw the line? How much growth are you willing to sacrifice for a little more protection? Or the other way around. Finding that just right balance, well, that's the permanent challenge.